Just like gender, there are tens of thousands of different sexualities that come in all different shapes and sizes, apparently. Everything from the apothosexual, defined by a hatred of sex, to furry sexuals, which I don't want to talk about. And I've been hard at work in the lab inventing new ones for you to try on, like gloves, to cut through the messy noise of identity. And I am the only one qualified to do this, as the world's only queer theorist and sexpert. But what sexualities am I, you may be wondering? Well, let's get this out of the way, alright? I'm J regular. I'm a normal guy. As a result, my sexualities are as normal as possible. First of all, I'm atrosexual. That means I'm attracted to attractive people. This stands in stark contrast to ugosexuals, who are currently sliding into Steve Buscemi's DMs. Now, agosexuals get off on sex acts without them in it, as opposed to me, a reverse agosexual that likes it when I'm involved. Agosexuality is a form of asexuality. Some people might call the opposite of asexuality allosexuality, but I just call it being not weird. That's right, weirdos. I'm deterritorializing weird sex terms from you. Now, us normals get some weird sex terms. As a normie, I'm also a normie-sexual in that I am attracted to plain-looking people. The ideal fantasy for the normie-sexual is this guy, who is the composite average of all human faces on the planet. Ooh, yeah! Don't get any more specific than that! Sapiosexuals are attracted to intelligence. As an inverse sapiosexual and ignorosexual, I am attracted to a lack of intelligence. Now, before you judge me, this is actually a very normal sexuality, which means that there's nothing wrong with it, because himbos and bimbos exist, and those are very popular archetypes. Now, I'm also a romantisexual, someone who is sexually attracted to those that they are romantically interested in. This is also what we call being normal. But there are unfortunate deviations to this pattern that some would call the Madonna whore complex. The inverse of a romantisexual is somebody that loves who they cannot have sex with and has sex with someone that they cannot love. You can also define this as being whore-sexual and Madonna romantic. Then, of course, there are paradoxosexuals. The whore-romantic, for example, is specifically romantically attracted to whores because they cannot be romantically attracted to whores. Paradoxosexuals are an example of metasexuality. Metasexuals are attracted to people's sexual orientation. So, for example, if you're only attracted to other straight people, then you're a straightosexual, a form of metasexuality. If your straight partner coming out as bi would make you lose attraction to them, then you're probably a straightosexual. However, there's also bisexual chasers who are specifically attracted to bisexual people, and knowing that they're bisexual is a turn-on for them. This makes bisexual chasers metasexuals as well. Bisexual sexuals, if you will. And you will. Anyways, that's as much as I want to talk about bisexuals because they're not real. I myself am a half bisexual. Which half? Guess in the comments below! This takes us directly into meta-fetishes, or metishes for short. If this sounds fun to you, don't be so sure. Metishes can actually be very complicated and confusing. In a traditional sadomasochistic relationship, the sadist gets off on the masochist's pain, and the masochist gets off on the masochist's pain. In meta-BDSM, however, the sadist knows that the masochist is having a good time, which makes the sadist sadder and sadder. Meanwhile, the masochist realizes he's having a good time, which makes the masochist sadder and sadder. But when the sadist realizes the masochist is getting sadder, the sadist actually starts getting happier. When the sadist starts getting happier, the masochist also starts getting happier, which in turn leads to the sadist getting sadder. Essentially, they keep each other in an inverse sinusoidal relationship of pleasure. While we're on the topic of metishes, there's also carnivore vor and herbivore vor, which are specific kinds of vor where you vor herbivores and carnivores, respectively. The mantisexual is actually somewhat related. It's when they rip your head off afterwards. Fellas, tell me how many times that's happened to you, spiritually or otherwise. Now we have the hypothetisexual. So hypothetisexuals are people who are only hypothetically attracted to the sexuality that they claim to be. Most Western women, for example, are what we call hypothetibisexual. Now we should probably discuss demisexuals. A bit of an etymology lesson. Demi means half. So what they're implying here is that one half of the relationship is emotional, spiritual, romantic. The other half is physical and sexual. And in order to get to the sexual part of the relationship, you must first pass through the emotional part of the relationship. So a demisexual has a requirement of an emotional connection before a sexual connection. I am an inverse demisexual. I require a sexual connection before any chance of emotional connection. At least that's what I say on Tinder. In fact, not one time has that been how it's worked, but I think if I just keep trying the same strategy, eventually I'll find love. You can also call this demi-other sexuality, or just dem-mother sexuality for short, because it's basically mommy issues as a sexuality. Freud was right! Who can say where the wind blows, where the night snows, na-na-na! Anyways, let's move on to the autosexual supertype. An autosexual is attracted to themselves. An autosexual is attracted to themselves as Cars from the movie Cars. They're trying to get that cussy. They're driven. Historical figure Otto von Bismarck was actually one of these. He wanted to drive as himself as a car from the movie Cars from his hometown to my hometown, actually, of Ottawa, on one of the world's fastest highways. He was a real Autowan-sexual. Nailed it! Autogynephilia is a genius term from a renowned scholar that I've only heard good things about. And it basically just means when a man is attracted to himself as a woman. A woman, then, attracted to herself as a man would be an autoandrophile. Auto meaning self, andro meaning man, and phile meaning love. Now, using this naming scheme, I want you to figure out what it would be called if you were attracted to yourself as a child. Ooh, yeah! This is easily the worst joke I've ever made. We can imagine an autosexual and an asexual kind of on opposite ends of a linear spectrum. The autosexual is actively attracted to himself, whereas the agosexual is actively repelled by himself, to the point where he doesn't even like being in sex acts. He just likes seeing other people go at it. But as we know from this channel, all linear spectrums horseshoe into a singular point. What is that singular point for the autosexual and the agosexual? It is the AUTOAEGOSEXUAL. You can kind of see the similarities in this horseshoe because the agosexual is so repelled by himself that he's not having sex, but the autosexual might be so attracted to himself that he doesn't want to have sex with anyone besides himself. Thus, we have the AUTOAEGOSEXUAL, who has to clone himself twice and get cucked by himself in order to feel anything. Well, I'm out of dopamine. Normally, here's where I'd put a conclusion, but a conclusion implies that there was a point to any of this, which there was not. So instead, I'm just going to show you an ad because this video was demonetized.
Hey, you there. Do you have horrible hand-to-mouth habits? Huh? Well, have you heard about Fume? Fume is an innovative, award-winning device that lets you quit your terrible habits. Like so. As you can see, there's no smoke coming out because I'm simply inhaling an essential oil core. And you can also adjust the airflow like so. Sleek, wooden design, and it's fun to fidget with. It tastes so good. Oh, I'm fuming. Currently, I'm sucking on their mint flavor, but they've also got orange vanilla, raspberry lemon, and sparkling grapefruit. Go to tryfume.com/JREG to get 10% off your order.